A bit like navigating through rough, choppy, piratey seas, Danish has a reputation for being hard to pronounce, but as it turns out, the rest of Danish is actually pretty smooth sailing, and you might even see some mermaids. Don't believe me? Well then, may I present 11 completely true reasons to learn Danish.
Is this what it feels like to be Danish? I couldn't wait to meet some happy Danish locals.
The world is told Denmark is the happiest country in the world. Are you happy?
Right now I'm happy, yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm happy, yeah.
Yes, I'm super happy.
Really?
Yeah.
What's that like?
Ever heard of the World Happiness Report? Every year there is a giant poll this big to see where we're all at in terms of happiness, and Denmark is making a habit of coming second in the list. Now, I don't know what they're going to do about it if we are not happy, but they say they want to understand our feelings, so I'm going to leave it at that and hope for the best. Anyway, they do these surveys in more than 150 countries each year and base the outcome on these 6 key factors. What are they laughing at? It's those Danes again. Well, if you need a little more convincing that life is lighter in Denmark, this little gathering in Copenhagen is exactly what it looks like. People just laughing. More than 10,000 of them. It was called Happydemic, and it made the Guinness Book of World Records. It was actually India that started World Laughter Day, but I think most countries kind of missed the memo. But what's so funny to the Danes?
Real reasons Denmark is the happiest country. Number 1, they get to wear quilted adult onesies.
You're on an earwax guy committing suicide. I'm on a rat throwing up. There's kids everywhere. This is so much weirder than I could have guessed.
This is Denmark. Like, I don't know what you imagined when you thought of happiness, but I think this wasn't it.
Well, the survey came back. Turns out that people who live in Denmark are happy because they get a few key things right. They spend a lot of time in nature. They don't compare themselves to their neighbours. Most healthcare is free. And there's a high level of equality in Denmark, which includes keeping everyone's ego in check. But the main idea is simple. Focus on the things that make you happy in life, which may or may not include eating bees. So stay tuned.
The next rune is this one, and it is called tutors. It stands for thorn or giant, and the corresponding letters is a bit special for this rune. It is actually T and H at the same time, so TH after each other.
The Vikings are often misunderstood, poor old Vikings, but they were super smart and wrote some pretty epic poetry. Ever seen a real Viking poem? They called their language Danish tongue. We call it Old Norse, and it's the language that Danish descends from. And of course, you wrote it with the runic alphabet. Now, Old Norse is a dead language, a bit like Latin, but I've heard Scandinavians say it wouldn't be too difficult to learn. I was intrigued by something an expert on Norse mythology said. If you learn Old Norse, you'll be able to speak one of the most harshly beautiful languages ever spoken. Sounds incredible, right? But if you want to untangle the language, it would help to have a solid foundation in Danish and also study Old Norse literature to understand the context. Because the Vikings, you see, used a lot of fascinating riddles in their writing. So what do you think? Would you like to write with runes? Can't you just write in English with runes?
And the fact is, there's simply no answer because no runic alphabet was designed for use with a modern language like the English that I'm speaking right now. Are you going to write 6 runes, K-N-I-G-H-T? If you do, the spelling will be recognizably similar to modern English, but anyone looking at those runes is going to read Kniget and is not going to understand what you mean, probably.
Well, this rune here means the dawn and new challenges or adventures. It can also mean a breakthrough, and if you want to experience a breakthrough in your language learning, well, simply click these 3 story learning runestones right here.
By accident, we actually fell down on something that appears to be the northernmost place on Earth, the closest to the North Pole that somebody ever have been. And that's, of course, a funny feeling.
In 2021, a Danish research team accidentally found this island, which turned out to be the tip of a grounded iceberg. But it must have been really exciting.
So you will be the first one hearing the name of the island that we will suggest for the island, and it will be called Haradak Naslek.
So this one's for the researchers among you. How would you like to be part of important academic discussions around Greenland? Greenland is a huge island in the Arctic region and an autonomous part of Denmark, along with the Faroe Islands. Most people know very little about this part of the world, but things are changing big time. Greenland is attracting more and more international researchers, so don't miss that boat. And any guesses what would help you? Well, let me tell you, Greenland has great research potential. It's an important player in Arctic research. The usual topics are climate research, wildlife, and various humanities projects too. But although a lot of foreign researchers are there, everything in academia is conducted in Danish. I read this on the Arctic Hub website. It may well be a bit difficult to find the information you need if you are not fluent in Greenlandic or Danish. So there you go. Also, Greenland's foreign policy is decided in Denmark in the Danish language. If you want to get involved, you're going to need at least intermediate Danish skills or you will not have a clue what is going on. Bottom line, guys, Danish gets your foot in the door. But if you prefer adventures that don't include seasickness, here's an idea. Live in Denmark and study Viking history. Apart from the brilliant Viking museums, Denmark is where you can bypass the internet and get 100% true tales from the lands where they actually lived. And for a bit of fun, you can even get a summer job as a Viking. Starting in April each year, these guys dress up in Viking gear and spend their days at real historic Viking sites where people come to watch and to be amazed. They demo awesome Viking things like forging a real knife in a fire using authentic Viking tools. Some of the annual festivals have really crazy traditions. A mock Viking battle. This beats anger therapy, hands down. And you probably want to understand what your enemy is saying, right? Now, wait a second. Now we know the real reason you Danes are so happy. But if you don't like crowds and just want to be a Viking all by yourself alone in the woods, there's nothing stopping you. Denmark has shelters all over the forests and they are safe, so you can go wild.
Oliver har et eller andet arrangement i aften, han skal spille til. Jeg har lovet ham at spille noget guitar.
All my mistakes, they led me straight into you.
In 1995, 4 ambitious young film directors made a vow of chastity, and it made them famous. See, they were sick of Hollywood's model of special effects and excessive budgets because they felt it weakened the art of cinema. So, what did they do? In 45 minutes, they came up with the Dogma Manifesto, basically a commitment to simpler and more authentic filmmaking. Everyone had to sign it, and Danish movies became good. Next thing, other indie filmmakers started joining the movement. Fast forward to now, are Danish movies good enough to learn Danish for? Well, they've won 4 Oscars for Best Film, among many other awards. Their movies are often quite dark or controversial, but super creative and absolutely never ever boring. A lot of people these days are looking for a way into Europe, and Denmark looks like a pretty solid option. But how can you make this happen? I've read in numerous places that the 3 easiest ways to get residency in Denmark are get a study visa, very easy, get a job offer, not so easy, or marry a Dane. I can't tell you how to do that one, I'm afraid. But let's say you have a plan and you want to buy a house.
Bestemt lån, det var det bästa lån man kan få, for eksempel. Og det var ikke så nemt at få det som en udlænding. Og jeg har læst, og jeg har også snakket med venner, at det var rigtig vigtigt for bank, når de snakker med dig, at se, hvis du har en tilknytning til Danmark. Og hvis man kan vise og fortælle dem en god historie og hvorfor du har en god tilknytning til Danmark, det er måske nemmere at få løn. Jeg straks skiller mig ud fra de andre udlændinge.
How about the job hunt? Well, if you land a job in Denmark, it means really good money. But from everything I've read and seen, it's important to speak Danish if you really want that job.
So if you don't know Danish, it's definitely possible to get a job in Denmark, but it's a heck of a lot easier if you do speak Danish, or at least some. And part of that is because finding a job in Denmark has to do a lot more with your network than your actual skills. They hire for cultural fit.
There are a ton of applicants that apply for jobs in Denmark. It's a very desirable job market, including folks that don't even live in Denmark quite yet.
Also, government jobs all require Danish fluency, perhaps obviously, and that's 40% of the jobs. Remember too that most Danes speak English, so your English doesn't make you special. Here's some good news though. In January 23, the government published a huge list of job titles that they need foreign workers for, so maybe have a look at that. And if you go the love route and marry a Dane, you will have to take a language proficiency test 6 months after you arrive in Denmark. But there's really nothing to worry about when people like us here at StoryLearning offer such good, cool Danish courses. If you want a cool Scandinavian life, just learn Danish. This is your ticket to a lot of good things, guys. Access to all of Scandinavia, for one. It's the hardest of the 3 core Scandi languages. So if you conquer Danish, then Swedish and Norwegian will be a breeze after that. You can also use Danish in Greenland, where most people are bilingual because they learn Danish in school. And in the Faroe Islands, same story there. But there's more.
And there's not enough English language YouTube channels or English language conversations with your friends that are going to really get you into the Danish culture unless you learn Danish language. And that's been a barrier for us so far from fully understanding more about Danish culture and Danish life, because our Danish isn't really all that good. And that's really blocked us from being able to fully enjoy the Danish experience.
And after that, you also have to do a culture and history exam. It's called the citizenship test. Not too hard, but again, all in Danish. Speaking of culture, didn't I promise you mermaids?
You! Canker blossom, you! Thief of love! What have you come by night and stolen my love's heart from him?
Faith, have you no modesty, no maiden shame, no touch of bashfulness?
Some people translate Shakespeare's plays into modern English. I'm not judging, but I'm sorry, I don't want to read or watch A Midsummer Night's Dream in modern English. The whole point is those Shakespearean insults. Same idea when you read a Danish story from the 19th century, like The Little Mermaid. Oh, you only know the Disney version? Oh, I'm very sorry. The guy who wrote the original story is, of course, Hans Christian Andersen. Heard of him? He's a national hero to the Danes, as this statue proves. And his little lady is a Copenhagen icon. But if you think you know the real story, all I'm going to say is you will thank your parents for reading you the Disney version, trust me. His original stories were written for grown-ups, and they're pretty grim. Anyone know how The Little Mermaid really ends? Hans Christian Andersen found all sorts of creative ways to fit his socially progressive views into his fairy tales. Anti-slavery, suffering of women, harsh love lessons. Even The Ugly Duckling is about his own misery before the money came. So if you want to find out what darker details are lurking in the original fairy stories, well, learn Danish. Speaking of stories, we have some good stories here too. Have you heard we have books of Danish short stories? And they are not all about misery, not at all actually, I promise you that. I'm more of a happy guy myself. In fact, I teach languages using stories too, including Danish, because stories, well, they're the most natural way to learn a language. And if you want to investigate a little bit more about what it means to learn languages through stories, have a look in the description below. I've got a link to a free story learning kit, which will give you a bunch of free goodies that explain the method and how you can use it to learn Danish, or any other language for that matter.
When I heard that Noma was awarded the World's Best Restaurant in 2021, I was so proud to be part of this amazing team. It's just so cool what we're able to do together. When you go to work here at Noma, you have a feeling that we're doing something really special.
Welcome to the world's best restaurant. Wait till you see what they serve. Noma is a 3 Michelin star restaurant in Copenhagen that took first place in the world's best 50 restaurant competition in 2022. And as if this wasn't enough, 2 other Copenhagen restaurants came second and third the year before. So are Danish restaurants good? Probably. Copenhagen is the culinary capital of the Nordics, and many foodies say it's their absolute favorite city in the world for eating. But if you can't speak Danish, you might end up in a bit of a Bear Grylls situation.
On the left-hand side, blackcurrant, flatbread with ants.
Only joking, they do speak English, if you trust their English. Noma likes to push the boundaries with their menu. They forage their own ingredients, and if you're not keen on raw reindeer heart, what do you mean you're not keen on that? You're probably going to want to know what you're getting first. But many other Danish restaurants are absolutely amazing. They pay top dollar, and there's a huge emphasis on organic homegrown produce. Pretty much a chef's dream.
There is nothing with which every man is so afraid as getting to know how enormously much he is capable of doing and becoming.
If you've ever dabbled in 1800s philosophy or psychology, chances are you've come across this name. They call him the father of existentialism. Because of him, people in many faraway places are learning Danish. So what's his deal? Well, he was a rather peculiar Danish writer and deep thinker who used to wander the streets of Copenhagen, writing down his fascinating thoughts on human life. He inherited a lot of money, had an extremely sharp intellect, and a serious case of the blues. His writing is so unusual that even Japanese philosophy lovers prefer to study his work in Danish.
This is Denmark, and our faculty, most of them are Danish, and they have a different teaching style.
If Danish professors can, for example, feel there's a good discussion going on in the room, they will kind of put the rest of the lecture on hold and allow you to just continue and dive into your discussion, because I think that's where the real learning happens.
Denmark is a goldmine of high-quality education and one of the most popular study destinations in Europe. They use innovative teaching methods. The learning environment is informal, lots of focus on teamwork and so on. But although it's not strictly necessary to learn Danish, to study in Denmark it is recommended. There are also fantastic foreign exchange programs at universities and business schools, and if you meet certain criteria, you might even be eligible for a state educational grant. Now, as for the study visa, if you have a spouse and kids, they're allowed to come along on your study visa with you, and the kids will even get free schooling. Your partner also gets a free pass to work, which is pretty nice of them. And when you're done, they give you a job search visa for 6 months. So why learn Danish? Well, it might just make you a happier person. If you want to give Danish a try, well, you should head on over to this video where I explain what it's all about.